I call the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Who needs John Shewan when we have that member? The government could have saved a lot of money by having a special inquiry and appointing that member an absolute expert on all things in respect of taxation. But moving on, sir, from his fiscal prowess. Sir, there is an old adage in respect of tax that for a tax system to be credible with users, it has to be simple, it has to be transparent, and it has to be consistent, sir, consistent. And this particular, if we're looking at, sir, 209A and the other provisions around student loans, I want to ask the Minister a question in a comparable sense. We have taxation agreements with Australia in respect of liable parent contributions, and I don't want to track into that too much, but to ask him a question around the inquiries that he may well have made of our Australian counterparts in respect of their robustness and doing their part of the deal in terms of the collection of student loans. Because when it comes to liable parent contributions, in my experience, having represented some constituents over the years, there is always an argument that is made that when you go to the Australian side of the coin, the Australian Inland Revenue Service, the ATO, they've got a bit of an attitude that says, we'll get to that when we can. Whereas we tend to, I think, our Inland Revenue in terms of policing our side of the fence in respect of Australians tends to be a little more vigorous in terms of meeting our obligations with our Australian cousins. But it has been said by many a constituent that when they're trying to deal with their liable parent contributions and representations are made to the ATO, the Australian Tax Office, that they don't prioritise this in a great way, that they get to it when they can as per their other work. And I'm being colloquial, but that's the feedback that comes through from people. And I suppose my question to the Minister is, have there been any representations made to the ATO in terms of what priority they will give in the collection of student loans and information sharing in doing their half, if you like, and their jurisdiction of the work? And I think that is a fair question to ask, sir. But as I said, and I look forward to an answer, as I said, and I know the previous speaker didn't touch on these issues, but fundamentally there needs to be consistency within a tax framework, simplicity and transparency. They are the fundamental tenets to gain credibility, tax system to gain credibility with those who use it, sir. And it is worth making a comparison, excuse me, as Mr Robertson did, with the level of detail that is required to be disclosed to the ATO in respect of 209A, 209A 1, 2 and 3, where we're talking about the borrower's name or any other name they may have been known by, the borrower's date of birth, the borrower's tax file, the borrower's last known address and contact details. You're almost asking for the borrower's shoe size, sir, you know, the length and depth of information that's required to be disclosed and passed on. Now, many would argue that is fair enough. Like many members in this House, many moons ago before I came in here, I had a student loan. I was lucky enough to get a decent job and pay it back. I think most students, just like most taxpayers, would argue that they should meet their obligations. Many struggle because of the nature of the income or lack of it that they get, but I think most fair-minded Kiwis would say that they will meet their obligations. However, you compare the depth and detail and requirements in 209A with other parts of the tax system, the policing, for instance, of foreign trusts, for instance, but I know that's sort of a quarantined subject. It's sort of had razor wire put around it in this House. We're not allowed to talk about it, you know. Somehow it's like some disease that's come in here that's sort of infected the place, but we've got to pretend that it doesn't exist. You know, so what is it? Suspension of disbelief, I think, is the technical term that people use from time to time. But if you compare the requirements on a student to the requirements on those who use foreign trust within a jurisdiction, you've got to ask, sir, does this bill, and does that matter, though it is secondary to this discussion, meet the test of a consistent, transparent, simplistic, simply put together tax system and tax framework, sir? And I'd ask the Minister, could he provide us with some information on that? Because there seems to be a gross inconsistency. No one's arguing that the requirements in 209A, sir, are not required or onerous or, you know, too tough. What people are asking the Revenue Minister, sir, does he still agree with the tenant that a tax system should be transparent and consistent? Because it goes, sir, Mr Chair.
David Clark.